The Summit Tech Standoff, a study in integrated credibility assessment. Alex sat in the Summit Tech investigation room, looking at two interview summaries sitting on the desk. The problem was obvious. These two stories sounded like they came from completely different worlds. Liam, a junior developer, claimed that his manager, Beth, had used a racial slur during a performance review meeting. Beth, a senior executive with years of service and no previous disciplinary record, strongly denied the allegation. She said Liam had created the story because he was trying to cover up his own poor performance. There was no recording. There was no direct witness who heard the conversation. There was no obvious smoking gun. This meant the entire investigation would depend on one critical skill: an integrated credibility assessment. Alex understood that this was not about deciding who seemed more believable based on personal impressions. It was about carefully evaluating the evidence, comparing the reliability of each account, and determining which version of events was more likely to have happened. The first thing Alex did was move beyond instinct and personal judgment. Instead of asking, "Who do I believe?" Alex asked, "What does the evidence tell me?" To answer that question, Alex created a credibility matrix. The matrix provided a structured way to evaluate both Liam's and Beth's accounts against established credibility factors. These factors included issues such as: did either person have a reason to exaggerate or fabricate? Were their statements internally consistent? Did their version of events make sense based on the circumstances? Was their account supported by other evidence? By organizing the information this way, Alex avoided relying on a simple gut feeling and created a more objective foundation for the analysis. Next, Alex compared the reliability of both witnesses. One important point Alex remembered was this: a person can be honest, but still be wrong. A witness may genuinely believe their memory is accurate, but factors such as stress, emotions, time, or limited observation can affect how events are remembered. When reviewing Liam's account, Alex noticed that Liam provided many specific details about the meeting. He described the room, the conversation, and even small details about what happened immediately afterward. These details did not automatically prove that Liam was correct, but they provided information that needed to be evaluated. Beth's account also required careful analysis. Beth was confident in her denial and pointed to Liam's poor performance review as a possible motive for making a false accusation. Alex considered this seriously. A possible motive to lie is important. However, it is not automatically proof that someone is lying. The question was whether the overall evidence supported Beth's explanation. Alex also noticed something unusual about Beth's wording. When asked whether she used the offensive term, Beth responded, "I did not use that specific term in that room." Alex considered why the answer was phrased that way. Was it a simple choice of words? Or did it avoid directly answering the allegation? This became another factor in the credibility assessment. Then Alex found an important piece of supporting evidence. A colleague who was not present during the conversation did not hear the alleged comment. However, the colleague saw Liam leaving Beth's office shortly after the meeting. The colleague described Liam as visibly shaken and unusually quiet. This witness could not confirm what was said inside the room, but the observation provided an important piece of supporting evidence. It was not the entire case, it was one more piece of the puzzle. Sometimes investigations are not solved by one dramatic piece of evidence. They are solved by multiple smaller pieces that point in the same direction. Alex continued building the reasoning path. During the investigation, Alex discovered a Slack message that Beth had sent to another manager several days before the meeting. In the message, Beth expressed frustration about Liam and commented that he didn't know his place. The message was not a confession. It did not prove that the alleged comment occurred, but it provided additional context about Beth's attitude and relationship with Liam before the incident. Alex now had to make a decision. Was this simply a situation where one person said something happened and another person denied it? Or was there enough evidence to determine that one version was more likely than the other? Alex rejected the idea of stopping at, "He said," she said. A workplace investigator cannot simply avoid making a decision because the evidence is complicated. The purpose of credibility assessment is to evaluate competing versions of events and determine which explanation is better supported. Applying the balance of probability standard, sometimes described as the 50% plus a feather, test, Alex concluded that Liam's account was more likely than not to have occurred. However, the final report did not simply say, "The allegation is substantiated." Instead, Alex explained why. The finding was based on several factors. Liam's account was considered reasonably plausible. His description was supported by his immediate emotional reaction observed by a neutral colleague. Beth's response raised questions because of the way the denial was framed. The prior communication provided additional context about the relationship between Beth and Liam. Together, these factors created a stronger overall explanation. This is the purpose of an integrated credibility assessment. It is not about choosing a winner. It is about explaining why one version of events is better supported by the evidence. When conducting credibility assessments, investigators should remember several important principles. First, weight the evidence due, not simply count it. Investigations are not popularity contests. 5 small pieces of supporting evidence, such as access records, timing information, digital records, or witness observations, may be more persuasive than one confident but unsupported statement. Second, use a structured analysis. A credibility matrix helps investigators test evidence against consistent criteria and reduces the risk of unconscious bias influencing the conclusion. Third, separate honesty from reliability. A witness may sincerely believe their version of events and still be mistaken. Always consider whether memory, perception, stress, or circumstances could affect accuracy. Finally, always explain the why. A defensible report does not only state which version was accepted, it explains why. If one witness's account is preferred over another, the investigator must clearly describe the reasoning, such as stronger consistency, supporting evidence, lack of motive to fabricate, or independent corroboration. The goal of credibility assessment is not to eliminate uncertainty. Workplace investigations rarely provide perfect certainty. The goal is to make a fair, logical, and evidence-based determination about what most likely happened. That is the role of the investigator as a disciplined trier of fact. When conducting an integrated credibility assessment, you must act as a disciplined trier of fact. Use the following thinking points to guide your determination. First, weight. Don't count. Do not simply count the number of witnesses for each side. 5 grains of sand of circumstantial evidence, like badge logs or physical reactions, can be more sufficient than one confident but uncorroborated denial. Then, perform a structured analysis. Always use a formal matrix, testing testimony against fixed criteria like motive to falsify and internal consistency prevents unconscious bias from clouding your judgment. An investigator should be able to distinguish honesty from reliability. A witness may genuinely believe they are telling the truth but be truthfully incorrect due to trauma or sensory barriers. Cross-reference every memory with hard digital artifacts or physical scene visits. You will need to explain the why. Your report must articulate the reasoning path. If you believe witness A over respondent B, you must explicitly state the rationale, for example, preferred due to contemporaneous notes and lack of motive to lie, to ensure the finding is legally defensible. At the end, an investigator should avoid the deadlock. Inconclusive should be your last resort. Apply the balance of probabilities standard to determine which version is more likely than not to have occurred. In conclusion, integrated credibility assessment is about constructing a credibility matrix, comparing witness reliability, and resolving conflicting testimony.